So, we are kicking off this episode of the show with some questions from the DMs. Yes, once again, we are delving into my inbox, my Instagram DMs, to give you some answers to specific questions that you've been asking. Now, let's start by looking at those Instagram questions. There's a couple that have come in around training, but also a hint to body fat reduction as well. So, let's answer this first question, which is, getting results with just free weights, dumbbells, barbells, and body weight, question mark. I assume that means, can you do those things? Can you get results by just lifting free weights, by just using dumbbells, by just using barbells, and your own body weight? And the answer is a resounding yes, of course you can. When you think about it, building muscle, if that's the specific goal here, and I'm going to assume that it is, building muscle is about creating tension on specific muscles. And usually you are going to use resistance to do that, specifically in the scenario or the field of fitness that I work in. So yes, obviously dumbbells, barbells, those types of equipment that you are going to use in any commercial gym is obviously going to provide that resistance. Body weight as well is going to provide some resistance to a certain degree, although often it requires probably some additional weight being added to that, maybe some additional equipment, because potentially you are going to max out at your potential with body weight. Now, that's not necessarily always the case. There's obviously some very more complex exercises you can do with body weight, and there are ways to leverage body weight to increase the resistance that you're placing on various different muscles, but often it becomes easier at a point to transition to doing barbell work, dumbbell work, and things like that. Now, the caveat I would have on this one is to say that you are still going to need some basic equipment. So even if you're training in your garage or you're training in your living room or wherever it may be, is that sometimes just dumbbells aren't going to be enough. So you're going to need some basic equipment like a bench. A bench is just going to be like a prerequisite because you need to be able to do things like bench pressing and maybe some seated shoulder presses. Maybe you want to do some hip thrusts and things like that. Obviously, there's variations you can do without that equipment, but I think that having a bench, dumbbells, barbells is probably the base level of equipment that you will need in order to get results. Now, the big question is, could you get bigger and better results by going to a commercial gym? Now, personally, I think that you could get better results and you could maybe achieve your goal quicker by being in a commercial gym environment, or at least in an environment where you have more equipment at your disposal, simply because you can pick better exercises that maybe work your muscles in a different way than if you would when you are working at home. So that's the kind of scenario you'd want to be thinking about. That, yes, I can work up to a point, but maybe you want to think about using machines. You want to think about using different exercises, cable machines, all those different sorts of things can really be great tools, great assets to help you build that fuck ton of muscle that you want to build in the gym. So the answer is yes, you can absolutely get results with body weight, with dumbbells, with barbells, with training at home, but perhaps there becomes a limitation factor unless you've got access to some really good equipment at home. Now, next question is, doing crunches burns belly fat and why people fall for it. So again, I'm going to paraphrase this question to be that, why do people do crunches or believe that crunches are going to specifically reduce belly fat? Now, I think that it's easy for people in my position to take for granted that everybody should know everything about fitness and nutrition. Obviously, if everybody did, then people like me wouldn't make shows like this to provide information because it would all be obvious. So sometimes it's very easy to think of certain questions as being stupid, as being idiotic, when actually they aren't. There is no stupid question. If you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. You can't be expected to know everything about every topic on the face of planet Earth. I'm sure whatever job you do, I do not know all the answers on how to do that correctly. You know, for example, if you're a lawyer, you wouldn't expect me to know everything about the intricacies of law. Therefore, in terms of health and nutrition and fitness and training and exercise selection and things like that, I would never expect you to know everything. So yes, For some people, it might seem obvious that lots and lots of crunches wouldn't necessarily burn body fat. But for other people, especially as a lot of the information that's thrown at you on Instagram, Pinterest, places like that are 6 exercises to burn belly fat and lose belly fat in 8 weeks, doing all these fucking stupid programs. Now, in the wake of all of that information, it is easy to think that they might actually be true. Now, the reason why you can't really do a bunch of crunches and lose a lot of body fat just specifically by doing that is you can't spot reduce body fat. You can't say, well, if I exercise this part of my body, then I'm going to lose the body fat from that specific part of my body. Maybe you've got some bingo wings flapping around and you think that doing tricep extensions is going to specifically tone up that area, make you lose body fat there. Of course, you will build muscle in that particular area, which will help in terms of the look and getting that toned, quote unquote, look, but it won't necessarily reduce body fat specifically from that area of your body. That's really going to be a genetic thing. Now, really, roughly speaking, we all hold our body fat in different areas of our physiques. Now, there's probably a difference between male and females. Maybe a female would hold more weight in their hips and their thighs and things like that. Guys more around their gut. Now, beyond that, there would also be some genetic differences in terms of when you go into a calorie deficit, you're losing body fat over time, and your own genetics would say, right, okay, well, you might lose weight from your legs before it starts disappearing from your abs. You might notice that a little bit more. Often as well, people who are transfixed on a specific part of their body that they don't necessarily like the look of, let's say it's ab fat, is that they don't notice that they're losing body fat from other areas of their body because all they're doing is being transfixed on the stomach. So they can't necessarily see that. Also, sometimes you get blinded by seeing your body every day in the mirror. You don't necessarily notice those changes, which is why progress pictures are really important to give you that really objective look at how you're doing. So no, you can't spot reduce body fat. You can't do 1,000 crunches and that specifically burns body fat. What it comes down to is, as I would always say, is think about your nutrition as a means to losing your body fat, managing your weight and managing how much body fat you have on your body. Use your nutrition as the primary source of managing that part of the process. Then think about your training as that's going to sculpt the body that I want. So if I want bigger glutes, if I want more definition in my tricep, I want broader shoulders, I want some side delts, I maybe want to bring up my breasticles or whatever it is that you want to do, then gear your training around that. And that's how I would start to compartmentalize and distinguish between the two. Now, the next two questions are from my email inbox. The first of which says this. Basically, the email was, what can I help you with? That's what I asked. So it comes back saying they want to lose the love handles and get a hard, flat midsection. I've been working out for 2 years, 3 days a week on and off, with the longest break I took was 3 months on 2 occasions due to injury. I tried a recomp, calculated my TDEE. I tried to be in a deficit, but because I'm a flight attendant, I eat all over the world at restaurants and hotels. I cannot keep track of my food unless I starve myself and only eat when I'm cooking home. So basically, I'm skinny fat who can either lose weight and look like a snake that just ate a mouse. That would be my lovely joke of a midsection. Or gain muscle and be the perfect perma-bulk meme. I just want to be lean with a little bit of muscle to look good in clothes. Okay, so there's a lot of information in there, and this is how I would kind of start breaking this situation down if this was a particular client of mine. Now, the first thing that I would almost jump straight into is the lifestyle of this person. So not necessarily anything to do with the specifics of what they've been doing in terms of training and a calorie deficit and things like that. It's about understanding more about their lifestyle, and then that's starting the cogs turning in my brain as to how I would coach that person. So if they're a flight attendant, now I've never been a flight attendant, but I can logically imagine what it's like. Obviously, as they've said, they're flying about all over the world. Now, when you are traveling a lot, maybe your eating patterns aren't going to be so regular. Maybe that when you're in these hotels, there's a lot of social pressure to eat with everybody else, and maybe they want to enjoy themselves and they're not concentrating on their weight. So there's that little bit of social pressure there. Obviously, eating in a hotel, you can't necessarily easily track your food, and therefore is tracking the right option for this person. So in this particular scenario, I think from a nutrition perspective, I would advise them to look at a distinct, like two different ways of looking at it. And one might be that when they're not traveling and when they're not in hotels, maybe they want to track their calories. That would help them with calorie awareness, so understanding the different calorie content of various different foods, but also allows them to maybe get a little bit more control of their diet on the days when that feels easy. Therefore, what you could do is then make sure that when you're not traveling, when you're not in hotels, is that you are making as much progress as you possibly can, because you've got that little bit extra control over your diet. Now then, when you are traveling the world, eating out of hotels, you clearly need a different strategy. Tracking is not necessarily going to be the right approach, and you just need to be aware that calories count, but you don't have to count calories. Now, in this scenario, you therefore might say, well, what are some of the things that we can do? Now, a couple of things that I might say off the top of my head to help someone that is traveling is that you can apply different, I'm going to call them restrictions on your diet, but don't necessarily see that as a negative thing. You are simply saying, in this one particular scenario, I'm going to add a restriction that is for a limited period of time. So you're not saying that I can never have these foods ever again. You're just saying that, okay, when I'm traveling with work for these 4 days, I'm going to place this restriction on my diet for 4 days. And I am doing that out of choice. And that's very different to saying this food's bad, can't have it, so take it out and apply that restriction. That's very, very different. Now, in one example might be is that you reduce carbohydrates. Might be that you intermittent fast. It might be that you try and reduce the amount of processed foods that you're eating. And those sort of little things are just nothing to do with tracking, but they are just things that you can do on a daily basis while you're traveling to make that process easier. You could also take snacks with you, so protein bars and things like that, maybe a bit of protein powder, just something that you know would help you to manage hunger potentially, help you hit a protein target, make you feel more full. All these different sorts of things will help. Now, also, when you go on holiday, most places that I imagine you're going to travel to, you could access supermarkets. Now, I would always recommend that you go to a supermarket. You don't have to buy a full week's worth of shopping and do freaking meal prep in your hotel room. I'm not suggesting that. What I would be suggesting is to say that, can you buy some food that's like you would eat at home, so you can create that sense of normality, so that you don't necessarily have to eat all of the hotel type food that's in front of you. You can make other choices. And obviously, when you're having hotel meals as well, you can make different decisions to reduce the calorie content of that food. So there's no need to starve yourself. There's just ways of putting different temporary restrictions or temporary strategies in place that are going to help you manage your diet. You can also practice things like mindfulness, so that when you sit and have a particular meal, you're eating to satisfaction, to fullness, rather than not eating to like, oh, I'm stuffed. You want to, it's satisfied, not stuffed. And having that conscious thought in your brain helps you to manage that as well. So then the other part of this for me is then, okay, we've got this situation on the lifestyle side of things. The next thing that I would be looking at is the training side of things. Now, if someone comes to me and says they've been training for 2 years, albeit with a couple of breaks in there, but they're still skinny fat. Now, if they're skinny fat, that basically means they haven't got any muscle. So if someone's been training for 2 years and hasn't built any muscle, then my first inclination is that the training is not correct. They've not been either training correctly in terms of the exercises, the training volume, just generally speaking, what they're doing has not been quite right because they haven't built any muscle, and or protein has not been where it needs to be. So those various different things are little bits of warning signs for me. So I think that even though this person has been training, quote unquote, for 2 years, I would class them as a beginner. and start them right back at square one with a very simple training program, and one that could be adapted and used in a hotel environment. So generally speaking, dumbbells, barbells, and a bench. Assuming most hotel gyms have that type of equipment, that's what you would go through. The other thing that you would say as well is when you're traveling, going to hotels, maybe you're not trying to make as much progress as if you were at home. So you can you don't have to be in a constant huge calorie deficit and things like that. You can adjust it and monitor it. The other thing is to really decide on a goal. I think the other thing would be to decide on a goal. Is it a case of really right now, it's body fat is the most important thing. As a beginner, you're probably going to build some muscle at the same time. But in this scenario, is it a case that losing some body fat before trying to specifically build muscle is the way to go? So that gives you a little bit of a hint as to, I think, like these types of problems, how to start breaking them down. Look at lifestyle, look at a logical situation, look at, okay, yes, tracking is great. It's a great tool to use, but you've got to think about what's your situation. Is tracking the right solution for you? If it's not, there's a billion different things that you can do. So just think about that before you start careering down a road that says, well, I've got a track. And then every 5 minutes you keep beating yourself up and kicking yourself in the balls because you feel like, well, I can't track this and I can't track that. And this is hotel, so I don't know about this. So what's the fucking point? And then you throw everything out the window and you decide to say, fuck it, and just crack on and just do whatever you were doing before. So make sure the solution fits your situation. So understand the lifestyle first and understand what methods of dieting and controlling your nutrition are going to work for you, because you don't have to stick to one, because it could be the same, like I said before, is when you are in these hotels for this particular person, or you're traveling with work, if that's your scenario, is that you have one way of managing things. Then when you're at home, you've got a bit more stability, you've got a bit more routine, you do something completely different. That's okay, it's cool. It's just about making things work and fit for you. That's the key. And so the last question I'm going to delve into was this one here. My biggest issue is that I get so hungry, legit hangry, about 4, I'm assuming PM, not AM, every day. I could go ahead and eat my entire dinner. I usually have a solid snack, something easy I can take to work, but by the time I work out at 5:30 or 6 PM, I'm hungry again. Current problem, if I eat dinner before working out, then I'm not working out until 8 PM. This leaves me awake really late, mama needs some sleep, and I get up at 5:30. Meal timing after lunch is messing with my mind. Now, again, there's lots of different situations here. So again, like from a coach's perspective, I'm looking at the way this person's talking, but also trying to piece together their lifestyle and how things are constructed for them and what logical suggestions I could make to help this situation. Now, always I think of 2 different routes to go down. One route is to make everything fit. Make everything fit perfectly, work around their timings and things like that, and make it all nice and seamless. The other option is to completely fuck up the person's lifestyle. Now, that sounds bad, but it can be quite positive, because in the right situation, in the right scenario, having someone do a complete 180 on their current habits and lifestyles and things like that can help them just really give them almost a shock into saying, shit, this is different. I'm really going to focus in on this. I've really got to concentrate to do this. And then it helps them to really focus in on what they need to do. This is something different. Wow, I've got to think about this. And therefore that conscious thought can help them actually make some results and actually start to achieve things. So that is 2 different ways to look at it. Now, this person, I would probably veer down the former of trying to make something fit. So clearly at this point where between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock when they're training, they're hungry. Now, the first thing to say is eat something then. Fine. Now, does it have to be a big dinner? No, it could be. You've got enough time at 4 o'clock. If you had a fairly large-ish dinner, doesn't have to be like humongous calories, but you could have that, bit it in your system, digested, all that sort of stuff, and still work out and not vomit up 3 minutes later. You could absolutely do that. So something with there would say, okay, what's triggering this hunger issue? Okay, it's 4 PM, something's happening, you're feeling hungry. Okay, embrace it, have something. Have something that is potentially lower calorie, high in protein, that's going to fill you up until you get to the gym. Maybe it's not too heavy so that it doesn't sit in your stomach for ages, but maybe it does. You just embraced it. You have something to eat. Now, clearly this person is going maybe too far the other way by having their entire dinner at 4, and therefore this dinner must be very large, and therefore they're training and they're pushing their workout back till 8 p.m. So that's not necessarily working for them in terms of their lifestyle. So again, looking at that lifestyle, looking at that piecing together, clearly the underlying tone of what they're saying is that they don't want to move their workout back because that's messing with their sleep, they're getting up early, so that's not an option. And again, like in your own workouts and your own lifestyles, you need to start looking at your problems from this perspective, starting to break down. It helps to write this stuff down, like in an email or whatever. Don't send it to me, but writing it down and really kind of then picking apart what you're saying. And for this example here, so they're getting up at 5:30. They don't want to work out at 8 because they need their sleep and that would affect that. So that's off the table. Off the table is a late workout. So what's on the table is a 5:30/6 p.m. workout. And now we've got a problem of being hungry at 4 p.m. So clearly the issue is firstly looking at hunger throughout the day, managing that. So maybe the calories are too low. Now I don't know this person's calories, but maybe they are too low for adherence at this stage. Maybe the calorie deficit is unnecessarily high. So that could be something to look at. Can we increase the calories so that we're still in a deficit, still making progress, still losing body fat, but maintaining hunger? The next thing you would look at is the constituent component parts of that diet. Now, has the person selected like a high protein options throughout the day, which is helping keeping them full? Have they selected lots of nutritious foods that are low in calorie, like vegetables, like low calorie fruits and things like that, so that they are having more food volume, but actually keeping down the calories as they go through the day? Could they reduce the size of their breakfast and increase the size of their lunch, or increase the size of that snack they have around 4 p.m? So for me, it's not necessarily a meal timing issue, as this person says. It's meal timing after lunch is messing with my mind. And again, from a coach's point of view, it's not necessarily taking that on board and saying, okay, well, it must be meal timing, so let's sort out meal timing. It's not meal timing. To me, this is just how the diet is constructed across the day. So this is about embracing those times, those triggers that you know, and then creating a strategy that works. And it might not be you get it right first time. So it could be that you say, right, okay, I'm going to have 200 grams of strawberries and a glass of water at 4 p.m, maybe with a bit of Greek yogurt, and that's going to really fill me up. It's a nice little bit of protein just before I go to the gym as well, so there's some benefits there. So that's probably a good meal. Now that might not solve the problem, but it's a start. It would be something that I would start to do. Look at those different sorts of options that you have and then make some adjustments to that. So I think that the crux of all of this, in particularly those last two questions, is that you don't necessarily have all of the answers. You can't be expected to know all of the answers when it comes to training and nutrition. That's clear. But I think that you can start to logically break down your own issues and your own problems. I really recommend that you write them down. What is it your issue? Like if you were going to write to me and say, hey Simon, this is my issue, this is what's going on. I say if, I don't necessarily want tens of thousands of emails descending on me overnight. But if you were to write that down and say, this is what's going on, I'm feeling hungry at this time, or I'm finding it difficult to manage this, or I've got this particular craving, or this really food's taking me off track, or whatever it is, write it down. Then when you see, okay, what is the problem that's going on here? Is it my lifestyle? Is it a trigger food? Is it something to do with your training not progressing as it should do? That starts to then, like a little detective, like a little fucking Columbo, it starts to break down where your issues are and takes you to that solution. So I recommend you do that. Now, hopefully these questions have really given you a bit of an insight into maybe how my mind works as a coach, and maybe how I start to break things down for clients, and how I would start to construct programs and individualized nutrition programming and training programming to solve problems. Because that's essentially what my job is to solve problems. Yes, I write nutrition programs. Yes, I write training programs. But essentially, I'm doing that to solve a problem. Nobody comes to me because they haven't got a problem. That's as simple as that. People come to me because they have a problem. And that's really what you've got to figure out, is what really is the problem. Not just the surface level problem of I want to lose weight or I've got a craving, but really understanding in detail what is going on with your life and your lifestyle and what's causing and manifesting that problem. Because once you get the right diagnosis, like a doctor, you can give the right treatment. And I think that's how you have to approach it. Not that I'm a medical doctor or anything like that, but you get the gist, you get the analogy, is that if you listen, get the right diagnosis, you can prescribe the right treatment, and then you can get over whatever problem it is that you have with your nutrition, with your training, and or with your health as well. So hopefully you found the answers to these questions really, really useful. If you did, you can come over to Instagram, maybe drop me a DM, and maybe you could feature on the next episode when we do questions from the DMs. My Instagram ID is at iron_paradise_fitness. And also, if you want to get started with knowing how many calories you want to eat in order to achieve your goals and things like that, then I'll put a link in the show notes and you can use my free online calorie calculator as well. And don't forget, when you land on that page, you can also download a free 4-week training program where you'll get some free recipe packs and other cheat sheets and guides and things like that too. So well worth doing, especially if you're someone who's a little bit confused right now, got a little bit of a kind of mindfuck thing going on. You want to get some clarity. You want to say, right, okay, I like this guy. He's talking some sense. So maybe if I use his calorie calculator thing, maybe if I download his program, that's going to be a good fucking start for me. That's a good logical process to go through. So I recommend you do that. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks so much for listening. Keep living the lean life. And I'll see you for the next episode of the show.